Are F-16s in Ukraine? Did Ukraine destroy Russia's, unstoppable S-500? There's so many headlines and questions and unconfirmed reports going around, so I figured let's just kind of do a quick little video, go through a mess load of headlines, talk about the rumors that are currently going around, and just kind of break it down a little bit, just because there's just a lot that's happening at once. First, earlier this week, it was rumored that Ukraine had received F-16s. And if you go back several months, we were always told that Ukraine was going to get them in the summertime, at least the first ones in the summertime. There was a lot of things that needed to be fulfilled in order for Ukraine to take possession of these aircraft. First is they had to build the critical infrastructure. As far as we know, they're putting them in different areas that are Soviet-style bases for aircraft. So that was done. Next, pilots had to be trained. These pilots had to learn English first before they can start learning these aircraft, since they'll be taught by English recruiters or different kind of trainers, and that was something that also was a hurdle. Then once they did that, they had to learn the aircraft on paper. Then they were able to go in the skies and train their aircraft. That was another thing. While that was going on with the pilots, the crew, because keep in mind, it's more than just the pilots, they had to get a crew together to teach them how to maintenance them, how to get things together, how to rebuild something if it falls apart, what to do if X, Y, and Z happens. They then had to make sure that the air, or at least the airspace, was somewhat safe. And so Ukrainians had to go out and destroy Russian air defense systems, whether it be launchers or radars or other kind of systems, to allow that wherever they're going to be stored is going to be good. And we technically don't know where we are in that mix. We're still being told certain things, such as in certain countries they're not going to be training Ukrainian pilots anymore past 2024 because they'll be out of F-16s, and so there's no way to even train, which means that all those F-16s will be in Ukraine. Then we started hearing reports that some aircraft will be kept in other countries, just kind of outside of Ukraine, just so that they're safe, and then if there's ever any maintenance issue, they could switch out those planes, which made people believe, hey, you know what? Maybe Ukraine is going to get these aircraft soon because they've made that partnership, and that's a critical infrastructure thing, to keep some of them outside of the country in case if they're needed, they can't be attacked, they can just go grab them, and they're good to go. And then everything just kind of added up into what just happened 2 days ago, which was we saw some reports come out, not from officials, but from folks who've been extremely reliable in the past 2 years, saying that they had spoken to their friends in the International Legion who stated that F-16s are in the skies and have arrived in Ukraine. Opening up Flight Radar 24, we saw that the United States, or at least NATO was flying certain planes, like the Sentries, which are, early detention systems in the sky, making sure there's no missiles in the sky. They were flying in areas that they usually don't fly in, which had people believe that aircraft were being moved from country to country, and so they needed an eye in the sky to keep an eye out to see if Russia would be sending any missiles so that the aircraft would safely make their way into Ukraine. And obviously, there's a lot of information out there. We can connect the dots a little bit, but there is still no confirmation that F-16s are in Ukraine. We have not seen any of that kind of battlefield video or any kind of data. And if they are in Ukraine, maybe it's kind of good we don't know. We kind of want Russia to be surprised, right? We want Ukraine to be able to strike Russia in certain areas and just do it extremely quickly, and Russia try to figure out, oh my gosh, what on earth happened here? And then boom, F-16s are on the battlefield. Because once they do come in, some are saying that they're not going to do anything or not do as much, but I disagree. Seeing what Ukrainian forces have been doing with their HIMARS and ATACMS, taking out Russian air defense systems, we've clearly scared Russia enough by destroying that stuff, which is going to make things harder for their own aircraft to get into Ukrainian airspace. And if Ukraine could use those aircraft to provide air coverage, which right now is only ground coverage, then yeah, Ukrainians should be able to push back the Russians in certain areas such as Donetsk. And so it definitely opens up a lot of questions. And one of those other questions have been, when Ukraine was destroying all those air defense systems, did they destroy an S-500, which was another report from this week, which was not a verified report. We did hear a statement from the mayor of Mariupol who said that we're still waiting on satellite imagery, but it looks like parts of an S-500 had been hit. Now, an S-500 is the most modern, top-of-the-line air defense system that Russia has ever built. And this one in particular was introduced in 2021 and was put outside of Moscow. And then out of nowhere, Russia decided to take either parts of it or all of it and bring it down to Crimea. Mostly, at least what everyone is assuming, is because Ukrainian forces have destroyed so many air defenses over there that Russia needed something to kind of be the brain. And that's kind of what the S-500 is. It's the brain that communicates between their own launchers and the S-400, where they can all kind of work together. And as far as we know, it's not working for the Russians. Many military, at least bloggers I've been reading, kept on saying how the American ATACMS have been like punching holes through all of the Russian air defenses, including S-500. Yet we still have not really had any of that concrete proof. Like I said before with the F16s, we're getting a lot of really good intel from people who are extremely qualified and have been reliable on a lot of their stuff. But at this very moment, we have not seen anything visual, and unfortunately, we're in a war right now where if we make a claim, or if Ukrainians make a claim, Russians are going to say, no, that didn't happen, and unless we have visual proof to say, yes, it did, then it doesn't make any sense to announce it. And usually Ukraine, what they do is, they usually have whether it be a recon drone or surveillance satellite watching a certain area to take before and after photos. So that way when Russia does say, hey, that didn't happen, Ukraine can just go, oh yeah, it did, look, here is the proof. And that's what kind of happened just the other day with the Russian deep space telescopes that Ukraine had hit. They hit it, they said, we think we destroyed it, but we're waiting. And there really was no main comment from officials until, let's say, like 5 days later, where we got satellite images showcasing that there was a lot of damage at that facility. The actual radars themselves are still standing, but it turns out those were not the main targets. They were going after other buildings in the communications center, which does kind of make sense. And so that's why some days it's just better off waiting to report on those things until we get confirmations. Now, one interesting thing, though, is that we've been seeing over the course of the past few days, Russia is really going ham with targeting Ukrainian cities. As Zelensky pointed out, we need more air defense systems and we need more long-range missiles because essentially Russia has a free-for-all when it comes to sending weapons and missiles, rockets, drones into certain areas. That's why just this past week we saw 37 people injured and 11 dead, and that was just yesterday and the day before between Zaporizhia and a couple other areas. Because Russia is using certain weapons that without certain kind of missiles or certain kind of air defenses is hard to take down. And this opens up more and more questions because Zelensky's been asking for air defense systems for quite some time. We need 7 of them. Some countries have already said yes. We know we're getting at least 3 more. And then we have the whole thing with Israel, who potentially has stuff, but cannot directly give it to Ukraine. And so they're working with the United States to see if their Patriot stuff can be sent to the United States and then sent to Ukraine. In the meanwhile, Russia is still targeting civilian buildings. They're going after high-rise buildings. Like just the other day, it was a 6-story building that was hit. A couple people injured, a couple people died. And it's things like that that Ukraine goes and says, look, okay, if you can't give us long-range missiles to take down these launchers, then give us something to protect our civilians. Because every day Russia is doing a terrorist incident or attack, and we can't stop it. And air defense systems are great, but it also doesn't solve the issue because we could put air defense systems out there, but that will only last until they're out of rockets. We need to be able to strike inside of Russia with certain missiles to make sure Russia can't do that. Because once Russia realized that Ukraine can strike into their territory to a certain degree, they started moving their rockets back further. And then it becomes like, well, now it's out of our reach. So we need to do X, Y, and Z. And that will become a problem down the line, especially because we're seeing Russia move ships out of the way. We're seeing them move certain aircraft out of the way, which can still be taking off in different airports and launch in. Though Ukraine can strike those, we do know they can, but they would still need long-range missiles for that. And so that's where they're looking at the United States, or looking at Germany, who still have not given any kind of TARDISes, which are very much needed, and other countries saying, hey, we need this stuff. When can we get said stuff so that we're able to strike these targets, take them down? And then if you could take down those targets from far away, then you don't need as many air defense systems. You see what I mean? Which brings up another point. Today, Zelensky sat down and did an interview with the Philadelphia Inquirer, and we're actually finding out how many Ukrainians are dying on the front lines, at least not a number, but a ratio. According to Zelensky, he was actually sitting down with this interviewer, and he asked, they have a lot more men and a lot more weapons. How are you countering that? And he said, indeed, they, meaning the Russians, have a much larger population, but we care about our soldiers more, meaning that we would rather have our soldiers be alive and use them strategically and maybe pull them back in certain areas, while Russia will just put them right through the meat grinder. And we've seen those numbers. When Russia first started their offensive in Kharkiv, those numbers were about, 1,250? It's came down a little bit. That average now per day is about 1,100. It's still high, because there was parts of this war where Russia's numbers were at like 400 to 600. So it's been really high for quite some time, and that means that Russia doesn't really care about their men. They're just sending men in there blindly, and Ukrainians are just like, what's going on? Because Russia's doing a tactical push in a sense of they're just throwing men down there, trying to overpower Ukrainians with manpower, while Ukrainians have the technology. And so he said this in his quote: indeed, we will not have a larger population than Russia. However, for every 6 Russians, 1 Ukrainian dies on the battlefield. Now, if you just want to base those numbers off of at least the public numbers that have been going, there really is no published number of how many Russian deaths. We know casualties are about 500. Actually, I can tell you the exact number. I believe it's 522,000. I could tell you real quick. Let me update it. I should have had that number handy. It is, 542. So 542,700. With yesterday's being 1,140, 7 tanks, 53 artillery, and then other vehicles, 19. If we based our numbers off of the numbers that's been floating around, we know, or at least they're saying, that there's been roughly about 64,000 Russian deaths. So if you did 1 for 6 or 6 for 1, that's about, 9,142, which is very low, I think. Keep in mind that's only based off of just the most recent months. It was originally a 1 to 4. So, take all those numbers with a grain of salt, since we don't have confirmed number. These are just based off what a lot of very well-known people who actually do data, that's what they're guessing upon. So you would say that based on the 1 to 6, Russia has lost about 55,000, but 1 to 4, it's also a different number. Once again, different ratios for different parts of the war. That 1 to 6, I think, or 6 to 1 is only just referring just for the past month and a half. So we really, truly don't know those numbers. That being said, Russia, he talked about weapons, and Zelensky did mention that they are getting some kind of weapons, but they're using it, I guess, more in a smarter sense. And keep in mind that Ukraine has only really had a new supply chain down for about a month. So if they've always had the supply chain, this would have been a very different war. And, Russia is getting more and more weapons from North Korea, and they're able to produce more weapons faster than Ukraine. So those are clearly issues down the line, and Ukraine is definitely trying to address that. But we're at the point right now where even Putin announced they want to start producing more and more of long-range nuclear ballistic missiles, because, the United States broke their promise from that INF treaty, when really it was Russia that broke it first, and then the United States kind of did it based off of training, and then Russia blamed the United States, even though Russia was the one that broke it off themselves. I know, it gets very, very confusing. That being said, today's been one of those news days where there's definitely been more questions than anything, which led people to even more assume that F-16s are around, because when we have slower news days, at least when the normal news sources stop giving things out, it's because they're waiting on a very important announcement, and that could be the destruction of the S-500 or F-16s in Ukraine. So, to answer your questions, we still don't know about the F-16s or the S-500, and I guess we just have to wait for an announcement coming soon. Let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comment section below, and if you haven't done so yet, please subscribe, turn on notifications, and give this video a thumbs up. I'm Joey. I'll see you later. Bye.